and there is so much, maybe it's something as silly as flat earthers or whatever kind of ignorance that is pervasive out there that you see and you go, guys, none of this matters. How do you handle what I imagine to be a very frustrating struggle internally? If I've seen this, if only I could communicate to them that none of this matters. They don't need to fight over these things. What is that like? What is that frustration like?
I think it's actually the opposite. If you have had a magnificent meal, like a wonderful piece of Black Forest cake that is as rich and wonderful as food can be, that doesn't somehow mean that all the rest of the food that exists isn't worth eating, or that somehow you're disappointed by the rest of life. You've just been privy to a richness that improves who you are, understands how things can be. And in fact, you come back from space with a much more realistic and I think eternally optimistic view of the world. But also, when you're on the space station long enough to go partway around the solar system, you can watch the whole world swap ends of seasons. And I was on it for almost 6 months, so I watched winter and summer swap in the world. And it was like watching the world take one breath, watching it rejuvenate itself yet again. And it puts things in its proper perspective. So if someone wants to stand up and yell something that they don't understand at the top of their lungs, it just makes it really easy to ignore them because they're saying something nonsensical and they're not making the effort to try and understand.
One strange rock is kind of a good description for planet Earth.
It is, because it's against all odds. You know, I mean, the sun has these huge solar flares, and we've got some visuals of that in this one episode that talks about the shields around the Earth, the magnetic belts around the Earth that protect us from that insult of radiation and you know, things that can damage life. And so Earth is kind of in that Goldilocks zone. It's the right temperature. It's got the protective belts. And now, you know, it's time to count our blessings, you know, how lucky we are to exist here on the planet and to have the oxygen around us and the right temperature. And, you know, it's pretty good life we got going.
So we have to take control over evolution to even begin to think about getting somewhere else. And why would we want to do that? Because you have to look at the single most important picture ever taken. There is no picture humans have ever taken that's as important as this picture. So this is the ultimate selfie, right? This is Voyager. At 6 billion kilometers away, it turns around and it focuses on us. And that little white dot right there, that's all of us. Every single person that lives and has ever lived lives in that little white dot.
I'm in awe of the complexity, the web of life, and the web of, you know, creating oxygen and doing everything that the planet does effortlessly. Because I spent time in an ecosystem that I had to make the oxygen, I had to make the carbon dioxide and scrub it out and maintain the temperature. So I am in awe of what the planet can do, and this series will make everybody be in awe of planet Earth.
Yeah, from your viewpoint, it gives you a perspective that not many of us have on realizing how astounding Earth is.
I don't think it matters if you're there for, you know, a year or you're there for a day. I mean, what, an hour, a minute, when you look out that window, just the overwhelmingly impressive beauty of it is something you can't be prepared for. And I love what Jane said about the head and the heart, because to me, that's what I felt when I was looking through the window, when I was experiencing Earth from space. It's like, yeah, I'm seeing it with my eyes. And I think through One Strange Rock, everyone has the opportunity to be reintroduced to our planet in a way that is just spectacular for sure. It presents the science, but it connects you in that way with your heart too. And you will walk away. I live on a planet and I'm an Earthling. And the decisions you make and the choices become different when you're thinking about that on a more regular basis.
It is one incredible planet you sense that when you're out in space. My other 7 astronaut colleagues reflect the same thing. You know how lucky we are, all the things that had to come together to make life exist as we know it here on this, one strange rock now.
A recent find by astronomers using telescopes atop Mauna Kea has redefined the foundation upon which galaxies are built.
All right, a unique galaxy is making the case for the existence of dark matter, even though it barely has any. Now, astrophysicists don't know what dark matter is made of, but they do know there's a lot of it in the universe, and the consensus is that dark matter outnumbers ordinary matter in a galaxy by more than 5 to 1. But in a new report in the scientific journal Nature, some astrophysicists say they have found a galaxy that has 400 times less dark matter than expected.
Astronomers using Gemini and Keck Observatory data encountered a galaxy that has almost no dark matter. That's a big deal because astronomers thought that the two go hand in hand. The idea was that galaxies started their lives as blobs of dark matter, then gas falls into the dark matter halos, the gas turns into stars, they slowly build up, and then you end up with a galaxy like the Milky Way. But this new find goes against what they thought all along.
So it's the biggest mystery, and we spend a lot of our telescope time, and many of our scientists use the telescope, are trying to measure the distribution of dark matter and what its characteristics are. Because this is a new, surprising result, it's a new clue into the nature of dark matter.
So tell me this, how could the discovery of a galaxy that's lacking dark matter help prove that dark matter actually exists?
Well, it's kind of a funny thing. It goes like this. Alternative theories about dark matter try to explain those effects by suggesting that dark matter is just an illusion that's caused by our lack of knowledge about how gravity works on very large scales. Now, if that's the case, it goes like this. Since all galaxies deal with gravity on very large scales, then all galaxies ought to show a dark matter signature. Here's a galaxy that does not show a dark matter signature, and because of that, that suggests that the non-dark matter models are incorrect, thus, sort of like coming at it backwards, proving that dark matter actually does exist.
Looks like Fox Mulder was right after all. The truth is out there.
There are so many other things that you need to concentrate on that knock on a door would be kind of interesting, but
You're welcome.
the other stuff going, why not?
Well, I'm going to stick my neck out, but how many people think I saw a UFO when I was up there? And I did. I mean, I saw things in the true sense of the word, unidentified flying objects. Don't take me out of context with that first quote. I had no aliens knocking, but, I saw stuff where I'd call my crewmates over, Stoetta, what the heck is that? And we'd look, and sometimes it was metallic, and it was, looked like a spoon, if you will, off in the distance. And the problem in space, good luck figuring out if it's a really small object close by, something that floated out of the airlock like a spoon, or is it something 100,000 miles away that's the size of a big spacecraft? And it's very hard to distinguish that. Usually it was, something you could kind of explain, probably an ice chunk off the external tank or something like that. But you'd see things, as you're saying, Nicole, that, you go, wow, that's cool. I don't know what that was exactly, but it's not a satellite because it's, doing something different, and it's pretty cool to see something like that. And you definitely, just like when you see something and discover something, it's like, hey, everyone, come on, I don't care what you're doing. Get over here and take a look. What do you think that thing is?
It's pretty wild. Well, that's one of the things that's always fascinated me is that as vast and as immense as it is and impossible to comprehend what's out there. But what was funny is as I was watching this and you go through all of the miracles and happy accidents and all right, well, maybe, I don't know, as big as it is, what are the odds all of these things would happen exactly this way someplace else? I honestly don't know.
Yeah, it's a series of miracles that occurred to get us to where we are now. Yeah. And that's the story that's told here, which is really amazing.
And then, the evolution of mankind, this stuff is, it's hard to comprehend. It's kind of like standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon where you kind of feel uncomfortable being there, but it's a nice feeling. Mm-hmm. And, I like that feeling of awe that I have for our planet.
And as you're thinking about life code, what you should be thinking of is every creature on Earth until last year was made of 4 base pairs of DNA. So every mosquito, every plant, every orange, every sheep, every human being was made of these 4 base pairs. As of last year, you can swap out 2 of these base pairs, and you can make creatures with XY instead of AT. And what that means is you suddenly create a parallel evolutionary track which potentially can make viruses or plants or animals that mate with nothing on Earth, that evolve on a completely parallel structure. And as you're thinking of those structures, what it basically means is the argument is that life turns out to be code. And so in the same way as you code with ABCs, in the same way as you code with 1s and 0s, you code with life. And if you code with life, then you write sentences with life. And as you've been seeing in the CRISPR talks, or in the evolution talks, or in the biochemistry talks, or in the biotech talks, in essence what that means is you can rewrite sentences of life. And if you can rewrite sentences of life, then you can build great big coding centers. And that's completely changed biology, right? Because if you think of biology and how it was practiced, 30 years ago, you had a whole series of biologists with microscopes, you had a whole series of biologists with little pith helmets looking around for plants, looking at barnacles, looking at fishes. So they were observing stuff, they were cataloging stuff. And biology was basically reactive, right? It's how does a plant grow? How is this a different species? And they were observing stuff. It was almost an outgrowth of Linnaeus or an outgrowth of Darwin observing a process. And what's happening today is the new biology is proactive. It's not what can I observe, it's what can I make. And when you make things that are alive, that changes the rules of the game in an absolutely fundamental way, because science used to be about discovering, and now it's about creating. So you're writing the sentences, you're not reading them. And in the measure that that happens, what it does is it's flipped evolution completely on its head. And you can use instruments like CRISPR to begin to edit. And it begins to give you control over what bodies look like. Because what you're doing is you're editing, altering, inserting, and deleting. And maybe you're not just going to do that with body parts. Maybe you're going to start doing that with memories. Because it's not just the human genome we're decoding, we're also beginning to decode the brain. And we're the only species that thinks of how it's programmed, right? No other butterfly sits there and thinks, why am I programmed to migrate from here to here? There's no sheep that's sitting there saying, why am I programmed to like eating grass? But we really do think about, why are we programmed this way? Why do we feel this way? We go to the psychotherapist to get reprogrammed, right? When you can fire neurons, you control memory pathways. So you can begin to insert memories. You can begin to alter memories. You can begin to delete memories. You can incentivize smells. You can incentivize movement. You're taking some pretty fundamental aspects of humanity, and there might be 1 or 2 ethical, moral implications to all this, which we might want to think about. Some people say, this is unnatural, this is dangerous, this is X, this is Y. We certainly have to consider the ethical, moral, legal implications of work that fundamentally alters life code. Why would anybody want to do this?
Ravi said in the earlier segment, not to play God. And that's really what I wanted to do, wanted to play God. Nietzsche said, if there were gods, how could I bear not to be a god? And that's a line that resonated with the person that I was. Kierkegaard said, if I ask you for a glass of water, even if you bring me a better drink, I'll be indignant just because you didn't give me what I wanted. And that's what I really want. Those are quotations that characterize where I was. And the justification that I had erected to be able to play God was rationalism. I had assumed that faith was blind. I had assumed that reason and faith were contradictory.
One of my professors at graduate school, John Warwick Montgomery, used to say, whenever you get onto a train of thought, make sure to check your ticket to see where it's going to get you off. And these isms have got tickets that have not been checked. The logical outworking of these is systemic contradiction. And when an idea is contradictory, it cannot possibly be true when two statements are mutually exclusive, unconditioned. So we look at humanism, scientism, and look at the strengths of them. What were the nobler sides of those? They're not ill-willed to start with. But if it is taken, let me put it this way. When you move through the isms going back across centuries, from rationalism to empiricism to existentialism and to postmodernism, all of these, the mistake that was made is that in grabbing the finger of one way of interpreting reality, they thought they were grabbing the fist of reality. These were single ways of testing truth.
You're writing about scientism as one of the isms listed here, 7 or 8 that you have. Acquaint us with scientism as it is a god of this world.
The regularity of the universe. The fact that the universe does proceed in patterns, in ways that are regular and scientifically explainable. There's no explanation for that if you take God out of the picture. Why would a random universe produce the sort of regularity that we could look at scientifically? However, you have an explanation of that if you have a God who desired relationship with people, who desired to create people into a stable environment where they could find meaning. Einstein said the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is its comprehensibility. Sure. Well, scientism is, the idea that as science continues to explain things, we no longer have any need for God as an explanation. And last weekend, I was actually on a debate show, a BBC debate show called The Big Questions. And underlying the whole discussion on that show was this assumption that science disproves God. And if you could have seen me, I was just bouncing up and down on the edge of my seat, trying to get the moderator's attention to let me in to say something, because I think that is such a grave misconception. This is what I would have said if they had come to me. When you think about science and God, arguably the two most significant scientific discoveries in all of cosmology in the last 100 years point strongly to God. One, that the universe has a beginning. And if it has a beginning, then there had to be something that got it started, that gave it that beginning. Not only do I think that science doesn't disprove God, but I actually think that only God proves science.
And the Christian is the only one who can put all of these together in rationalism and existentialism and empiricism. The Christian is not against these testing of truth claims. He or she is just making the case that if you want a coherent worldview, then the metaphysical side has to be examined too.